This was the week where Governor Andrew Cuomo says he won't resign despite the walls closing in on him. More than 50 New York State legislators, including New York State senators Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, and a number of New York Democratic congresspeople, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jamal Bowman, have also called for Cuomo's resignation, as now has Nancy Pelosi and even the New York Times editorial board.
Well, that is something.
Oh.
Well,
I don't see how he can get out of this.
How can he escape that? I met him in 2000 when he was going to primary Clinton for the Democratic senatorship. And he was on the corner. What an idiot. I mean, I met him in 2000 when I would never vote for this fucking guy in a million years. And, he people go, well, he's like Trump. And it's like, no. There are just people like this. And there's a lot of male personalities like this. Anyone who's worked in comedy knows that there are a lot. I mean, Jimmy Dore, look at that. That's another fucking waste of space. And that's another person who is a guy who thinks that if he screams loud enough and yells loud enough, that then you'll listen. And and I'm Italian, so I know this. Listen, the thing is that everyone goes, well, maybe it was this and he was single. There's a huge difference between wanting to date people and using your position of power to manipulate somebody or put pressure on them or hire them for a job. It is a no-brainer. But what blows my mind is that calls for impeachment come from that, but not from letting, 50,000 old people die? It's like crazy to me that we have so jumped the shark that actual actionable things that are done in the tangible world matter less than something that we know we can nail the person. And I'm not denigrating what happened. I'm just saying it is pretty amazing that's where we're at.
I think they're connected. I think they are connected. I don't think though, and I do think this is a moment where his star was rising and it fell real quick. Woo-wee. Yeah. Like this fall makes... Yeah, I mean, this looks like his whole rise and fall makes Kanye just look wholesome. Like it is so fast. And I think, yes, there are now 7 accusers who have come out and spoke out publicly about Cuomo either actually harassing them or actually assaulting them. And this is what Cuomo had to say in response this week to calls for him to resign.
People know the difference between playing politics, bowing to cancel culture, and the truth. Let the review proceed. I'm not going to resign. I was not elected by the politicians. I was elected by the people. Part of this is that I am not part of the political club. And you know what? I'm proud of it.
He's not part of the political club. His father was governor of New York.
He's part of the dynasty. Okay, there's a difference.
It's like, well, he's not even part of the Good Dynasty, which was on Friday nights at 9 p.m.
But he said cancel culture, like everyone drink no matter where you are.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing.
There it is. Cancel culture.
Yeah. Something that doesn't exist. And I mean, it's just, but he knows, you've seen this happen to comics, and now he's going to flirt with this like libertarian streak, machismo, this to me, it connects into this larger movement that's happening in the country, which Bannon coined 4 years ago. We used in our show, which is the Western chauvinism, right? That should be what people should be paying attention to, because if anyone remembers the QAnon swearing in that happened on Twitter over the summer, every person, every race, every orientation, every gender was doing that swear in. And even though it is important,
this was the Michael Flynn weird
presidential. And the reason I'm linking these two is just what he said is such a dog whistle to the deeper, obviously it's white supremacy. It's not about denying those things, but it's about understanding that this is a tiramisu. This is a quintuple layer cake. It is not just one thing. And one thing that is unmitigatedly a problem and is the sense of chauvinistic male dismissal of things that are of high order when it relates to them. And you could see this again, just to cite Jimmy Dore and Greenwald snickering about AOC being threatened at the Capitol and cackling about it, right? And shit talking it. And it's amazing to me because anyone who's ever been
in the same vein.
It's in the same vein, and he's living in that same place. He should resign, one, because I think he's going to try to run for a fourth term, which is
I was going to ask you.
nuts.
Yeah.
He's going to run for a fourth term, and he thinks he can beat it. And you want to know any bit of evidence that's the biggest bit of evidence against him is the behavior he's displaying right now.
Yes.
The behavior he's displaying is of a person who thinks they can punch through it and knows what they did.
Well, and I think in that way he is Trumpian, and he is pulling from a right-wing toolbox, which is never admit that you did it. And I will say, like, I'm of two minds of it, because with this bullshit cancel culture claim, I feel like we're constantly, you can't just say believe, you can't believe women. You can't actually believe women who've gone on record, who have risked everything to talk about what happened, right? That's not enough. You have to have like an actual investigation. Okay, that's fine. There's an investigation. The Attorney General of New York has appointed 2 attorneys, independent investigators. That is good. Like, right. I actually think that that's the kind of thing we should do, because otherwise most people are like, okay, 7, yeah, motherfucker needs to resign. But then there are people who are like he's saying, let's finish the investigation. And in some ways, I'm like, yes, let's finish the investigation. The problem is, when it comes to a sexual assault or harassment investigation, it is forever his word versus hers.
Of course.
It is forever. And he's already said multiple times, none of this happened. So what? Where do you go from there? And what is the investigation? Where does that end, right? So it always just becomes weaponized against these victims.
Well, this was Hammurabi's problem, which is why he wrote all those laws, which is that, there is always going to be the sustaining problem of certain crimes of essentially vagary, where you don't have, let's say, and I'm only using this, if you have a physical rape where there's evidence and a rape kit and all that, then it enters into and then we can get into all the problems of the justice system and policing and how they handle it.
Then maybe it'll get tested one day in like 20 years.
In 20 years. So yeah, I mean, I'm not walking down the road of going like the system's already there. It's not that, but we have 2 levels of problem, right? And the one, and they are different situations. Can he say, as anyone could say, let the investigation play out and da da da? Of course you can. Of course he could say that, and of course it's true. The investigation play out under the auspices of that and how they look at it. But the other question is one of political and is one of social, and we don't have and cannot have essentially social courts because there's no determinative way. How can you create a determination?
Right.
That's sort of subjective.
Yes.
So that's a problem that I don't think will ever go away unless we restructure how we educate people. And like we talked about sex education, there's a lot of things to deal with violence and sex and machismo and all that bullshit.
Yes.
Cut it
agreed.
That's my
agreed.
Thing.
And elect more women to office.
Yes.
And the other thing I'll say is, I think what I mean to say when I say like maybe just let the investigation play out before he resigns is because he becomes once again a fucking martyr, in the imagined cancel culture world of embattled men who clearly are guilty, but then become like another soldier in some bullshit war. And so you're totally right that it's nothing. He should resign over the nursing home scandal. He put sick people back into the nursing homes when he removed them from the hospitals after defunding hospitals for so long. Right. So anyway, but
I agree. Well, I totally agree with you, and I want to move. I know you want to move on. It's just that this issue also it has to do with. Like you said, putting women in more positions. And the morning show, some people didn't like it or whatever. I really enjoyed the morning show because
it's a good show.
It took you on such a ride of the thing you're describing, the point where they even take you on this sort of righteous moment where you go, okay, so maybe his character's a little more moral than I thought. And then you're like, oh, he's not. And you realize the levels of pretending and posturing. It's very tricky and dark. And, I think one of the big things is to Stop. We have fallen in love in our culture, and we depict this in our stories of the brutal, damaged man who's pretty shitty, and but ultimately you love him. That's a problem when that's the thing that you sell people all the time.
Totally. He's pretty shitty, but not that shitty. We're Cuomo-sexuals. Oh my God. The poor white feminists that have to issue apologies right now. Hey, thanks so much for watching the Bitchuation Room podcast live stream. And while you're here, why don't you just subscribe to this channel? I promise it'll be good.